what we are getting to now is games, because this
Actual gaming.
we talk about video games. So since we missed last week, there's actually quite a bit to like get to, because we've both been playing quite a few different things. I think the one that I'm most excited to talk about, and you are, is Resident Evil Village, which we both finished now. I'm actually kind of glad we didn't get to speak about it last week, because I hadn't finished it and you were like hardly...
We'd played a few hours each, I think, last week. So,
but now I finished it last night. You finished it on stream on Thursday, twitch.tv/Arenes. Game is good. I really like it.
So we'll obviously do a deeper dive into it, but I will point out we're going to do a spoiler-free discussion. Don't worry, we're not gonna tell you that, Albert Wesker does or does not appear in the game.
Yeah, I'm not gonna spoil the entire ending.
But what I will say is that this game is a wild ride.
Holy shit! Yeah,
it is. Like, in every sense of that expression, it is a wild ride, and I really, really enjoyed it. Like, it's amazing that Capcom with Resident Evil 7 just kicked off this. I don't know. It feels like they're a new company, just hit after hit. Like, Resident Evil 7 was a really good reboot for the franchise, which with the initial marketing, it was like, where does this game fit into the franchise? Because it's like this redneck horror game, it felt like, but then by the end you're like, oh, it actually does tie into the bigger story. And then they follow with remakes of 2 and 3, which were both, 2 Game of the Year nominee, 3 not as good, but still I had a good time with it.
I still dug it. Yeah, it was a good time.
And then Resident Evil 8, like when the initial marketing came out, I'm always a bit cautious, because you always think like they have to miss at some point. Like there's always going to be that one game at some point. It's like, just didn't feel as good as the game before, whatever. But Village, I think, really holds up, and it really stands out as a unique entry into the franchise for a number of reasons, which we'll get to.
It is definitely unique. I think it's weird. It's very different from 7, despite being a direct sequel. Like 7 felt like it was definitely pulling from the trend of horror, where it was like you are roaming in a space and you can't really fight back. And that was true for like a third of the game. And then it settled into more like Resident Evil tropes. But I definitely felt like 7 was arguably one of the most scary entries in the franchise. And 8 or Village, whatever you want to call it, is not that. Like, no. I think there's a portion of Village that is genuinely terrifying, and I love that portion, but the rest of the game is not. It doesn't feel like horror. Yeah.
What I will say is that it doesn't feel like it's not scary horror. Like I know we all know, anyone who's played the game knows exactly what portion you're talking about, and we're not going to spoil it for obvious reasons. But that is a high point of the game where it is like, holy shit, this is
my favorite part
actual
of the game.
Terror.
It was funny because it came just after I'd literally tweeted being like, I'm like a third into this game and it's genuinely not that scary. And then that happened. And I was like, okay, never mind.
But what I will say though is that, so not scary in like, that sort of sense of the word. But what I did like throughout the game is that there was it might not have been like the high points of the franchise, but there was a constant sense of tension, I felt, where
for sure.
There's always a thing of, you think you have enough ammunition, and for all intents and purposes, like I would probably not run out of ammunition because I play very conservatively.
I tuned into your stream and you had like 120 handgun bullets.
But you know how quickly you burn through that though, and like any encounter, like they'll give you a lot of ammo, then it's like, oh cool, I'm good. Then you end up in like 2 or 3 fights. It's like, oh shit, I've only got like 20 handgun bullets now, and it's a thing of like, well, I should craft more, or like maybe I should just switch over to my shotgun or sniper rifle. Like that constant balance of like, oh my God, like am I using my weapons correctly? Am I splitting out their use fairly that, I don't run out of any sort of ammunition? And even like there was a fair bit of healing through the game, but I never had like more than 2 or 3 full first aid kits. And that's down to a combination of the game and my own stupidity of like sometimes, like in my panic, I spam R1 and I end up using 2 things. I'm like, how did this happen? But sorry, just to drive home that point, that constant thing of like, I'd never had an abundance of still like you do get abundance moments, but they don't last. Like I felt that you burn through your resources and then you top them up, and you burn through them and you top them up. And that constant tension, like I found, was pretty consistent throughout the game in my experience.
I do think one thing Village gets right over 7 was that 7 was more about the Baker family, and only when you were interacting with them. Well, okay, so interacting with them was the most exciting because the like cannon fodder mold enemies sucked. Like they weren't scary, they looked stupid. This game it goes back to the more traditional like fodder enemies. Like you've got vampire witches and you've got Lycans and you've got weird robotic gross body horror things like and that's cool. Like you said, they drain bullets because they move in very interesting ways. They're animated to very much like not let you follow them with the crosshair. But then they also just take an abnormal amount of firepower. So yeah, I get you in that sense. Like you've got a lot of ammo, but you can like there were encounters where I burned through everything. And especially later in the game, like you come across portions where you are not getting ammo and the resources you're getting to craft ammo are very scarce. The probably one of the last biomes, if you want to call it, like the factory, I was like had no ammo for a lot of that stretch.
Good Lord. And that's a bad place to not have ammo.
Yeah, exactly, right? But it's very much like a Resident Evil 4. I'm not the first person to say that. It is much more action orientated. You get a massive inventory of weapons. Like I had like 2 pistols, 2 shotguns, a sniper. I had like fucking mines and pipe bombs. Like Ethan is ready to go. And they kind of contextualize it at the beginning where he mentions to Chris, he's like, yeah, I've done all your combat training. So he's not just this. Not in 7, he was just this schmuck who had never shot a gun in his life before. But now he seems to have got like actual training, and that's why he can use all these things. But the game's more action focused, and I don't mind that at all because it fits in with the flow of the game. What I think is surprising and what I really liked was actually the village itself. In the marketing, when Capcom was like, it's called Village because the village is like a character in the game. And I was like, okay, whatever.
Okay, but, PR mouthpiece, we get you.
Yeah, cool. Exactly. It's just like, okay, And then, a lot of the trailers, you'd see the castle. So I was like, okay, well, we're going to spend a lot of time in the castle. And that's like not really the case.
No.
The village is like the central place where once you've broken off to do a specific like story thing, you always come back to the village. And because of whatever you've gathered in that hub, you can now explore the village a bit more. And it, having just played Resident Evil 1, it reminded me a lot of the mansion because the mansion works exactly the same
thing.
way.
Yeah, you end up like, coming back to like open a door you couldn't open before or something.
Like in Resident Evil 1, you're going off to like the cabin in the woods and you're going off to that little residency with the really big spiders, which I don't like. But every time you'd get something, you'd come back to the mansion and it'll be like, okay, now I can open these doors or I can access this portion of the mansion. And the village is 100% like that.
It's exactly
that. Yeah. It's just expanded. It's a more open hub. And
it feels more natural as well. The way
it does, It does. It doesn't feel like this mansion that was designed by this madman that has all these traps and everything. It just feels like a village that is kind of, and they kind of use the events of the story, like the destruction, to block off certain parts and lock certain gates. I thought it was really cool, especially how they tease it at the beginning. It's like you see all these wells, and it's like, well, I need an item to
obviously get
bring
stuff,
up whatever's below there. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to get that, and you come across tons of cabinets that are locked, and it's like you have no lockpicks. So I think one of the coolest parts of Resident Evil is like picking up a new item and like recalling 5 places you can use it.
Yeah.
And like Village does that super, super well.
Yeah. It's in terms of the actual level design, I think like definitely kudos to the whole team because like that to me is like you've just mentioned, the first Resident Evil game is almost like a masterclass in what it feels like to you have a hub that you just keep bringing people back to, and you obviously give agency and context to why they need to come back. Whereas Village it's exactly that, but like on a bigger scale. It's like you walk, and even the village itself, when you come back to it, like you spend a large amount of time like going back into it to do stuff, and there's always like enemies or there's new twists or surprises, and I really enjoyed it.
And it paces the game super well, I think, because I mean you can definitely just hop between the core areas of the game fairly quickly, but like all of those are big like climatic points, and I found it nice to like roam around the village, take stock of things, fight a few enemies here and there, then go to one of those climax points. Like this game feels so expertly paced in a way that I think 7 struggled with a bit, because 7 started off so strong.
Yeah.
And then it feels like it loses steam as it gets to the end. Village doesn't feel that way. Village feels like it actually starts. I think Village starts off really, really poorly. I thought the opening hour when you're running around, when you first introduced to the village and whatever, kind of like sucks. And then the castle that you've seen, I think most of the PR and most of the marketing has been around the castle and Lady Dimitris, which, truth Bob, that's how you say her name. That's how they say it in the game. So, but you see that a lot, and I felt like that was the weakest part of the game, and I was just happy that everything else after that was like exponentially better. Like, even coming to the very end, as ridiculous as it gets, it's really good.
Yeah, I think just on that, what really surprised me was the fact that you spent such little time in the castle, and like I'm grateful for it, because then nothing I hate more. Like a good example I'd say is a movie trailer where they show you the whole movie in the trailer. It's like, oh, well, I don't need to watch that movie now. Whereas this was like, I'd say like 90% of the marketing is, it's the castle, and here's this lady and her daughters, and you go, oh my God, like, okay, cool. They're the main baddies. That's not the case. So when you get out of the castle, it was the sense of, oh shit, like what else does this game have to throw at me? Like where else am I going to go? What else am I going to fight? And I
think that's what helped my disappointment, because I felt like the castle was like, I think most people looked at the castle and they're like, oh shit, they're going back to the mansion vibes. And the castle was super not like the mansion. Like
it's super short as well.
Yeah, it's so short, and it feels like it felt like the castle was like really linear in a sense. So it didn't feel like that whole puzzle room sort of vibe was actually happening. I really didn't like the castle. I thought Lady Dimitris was very underutilized. I didn't think she was a bad character. I just think she never got a lot of time to shine at all.
Yeah.
But the rest of the characters are really good. It was very surprising to me that the castle was very much a prologue of sorts.
I mean, look, so when we say it's short, it's not like an hour. I'd say it's maybe like 3 hours, maybe a little bit more. But it just sets up the greater story, because there's a lot of shit that happens after that. Like even when you message me, you're like, I think I'm nearly at the end. I was like, you are, but
I was super wrong.
Because I was the same thing. I was like, I know I've got this one area to go, and there's probably another area after that. It'll be like 2 hours, and like it took me, I'd say 4, maybe 5 hours. Like it was quite a stretch. Yeah.
So when I told you where I was, I assumed that's where I was. I was wrong. I was at, let's say, a cavernous den of things before the factory, and thinking that was the end. So I was still a good like 3 hours. I mean, my total game time, the clock was 8.5 hours. That's it. It felt a lot longer than that.
Yeah, mine was 10.5, and it honestly, if I think about it, I broke that up over 3 streams, right? And my streams are 4 to 5 hours. So I'm like, how was it only 10.5 hours?
I was also a bit like weirded out when it said 8. I was like, it definitely felt longer than that. So I don't know if it rewinds time on death, but even then I died maybe 3 times in total.
No, but I thought maybe it pauses the clock like when you're in your inventory or when you're looking at the map or something.
Could be. That
which
could be.
Some games do that. Because I mean, stream time, like I'd say 14 hours.
But you did explore a bit more than me. I mean, before we started recording, you were talking about some enemies that I never got to. I was talking about some puzzles that I wasn't able to solve. So I do feel like I want to go back. I definitely want to play it at a higher difficulty because standard was cool. It was fine, but the game felt really easy to me. Like I didn't feel like I was sweating really at any point. So after the game, you get to unlock a new mode called Mercenaries, which should be familiar to anyone who's played some older Resident Evils. Yeah. It's like a arcade version of the game, and that mode is super fun. Like super fun.
I need to dive into it.
Like a score attack mode, and you've got to really choose your weapons and your loadouts like shrewdly because you have a very limited amount of money. So I've experimented. Like at first I was like, okay, I'm going to take a pistol and a shotgun, and then I changed that to a pistol and a sniper, and then I changed it to a shotgun and a sniper. And then yesterday, my best run was actually just with a shotgun. Like I sold off all my ammo that I didn't need. I just used a shotgun, and I managed to find a flow because it's all combo based. You're trying to keep a combo going, so you're trying not to kill tons of enemies and then have your combo expire before you get to the next like wave. Again, I spent probably about 2 hours just running the same stage over and over again, just getting better and better. Yeah. And it's so much fun.
Yeah.
And if that mode was co-op, holy shit. I'd be in there.
It's interesting because I think, I keep telling you that you should probably bounce off and play Revelations 2 if you want more Resident Evil. I think that Mercenaries mode, if I'm not mistaken, does have co-op, which is real cool.
That.
And even Revelations itself is that
I remember, because you play as Claire and
I can't remember her name, but it's Barry's daughter.
Who's Barry?
What the hell? Barry, you don't know?
Barry from Resident Evil 1.
Yeah, his
but
daughter.
Barry dies in Resident Evil 3.
No, he doesn't.
Yes,
Barry.
He does. Who's the dude that helps you in the store right at the beginning of Resident Evil 3 and then he dies?
No, you're
Barry.
thinking of, that's not Barry. Barry's the dude who saves you in Resident Evil 3. He picks you up in a helicopter. Trust me. Barry's... So
for some reason, I thought Barry was the dude in the gun shop who you get a gun from him and then he dies.
Oh, no. So Barry, you actually play as Barry in Revelations 2 and his daughter. What the hell is her name? Moira. That's it. Moira Burton. And it's a good time. But yeah, that Mercenaries mode has a co-op, if I'm not mistaken.
But what's cool...
Yeah, we should. What's cool about the Mercenaries modes in general is that they incentivize you to keep playing because you earn a currency, which you can spend on permanent upgrades that you can take into the main game. So simple things like you get infinite ammo for this gun, whatever. And it just, it's just good fun. Like Resident Evil, one thing I'm looking forward to doing now is going and watching a speed run. Seeing how people play the games, because Resident Evils to me are like one of the most entertaining speedrun games to watch, because people just, you think this game's hard or challenging, like how would you ever get past this boss quickly, and people figure that shit out, and they do.
I've seen people, I mean, not even speedrunners, just other games media and journalists who are obviously hunting some of the trophies. Obviously when you're going for a speedrun, you're playing it on casual because that's just the easiest way, and people who aren't speedrunners pumping out 2-hour completion times, and it's wild. Like
because it changes things when you know exactly where to go and you're not worried about like ammo,
and you know what's the mainline stuff as well.
Like,
okay, I can just avoid this, I can avoid that, blah blah blah. Game is good,
but Village, overall I'd say really good, would recommend.
Really good. Very different, a very different vibe. Like I still think, coming down to personal preference, I enjoy the dread of 7 more. But it is a different thing in its own right. It is a Resident Evil 4 for this trilogy, you know what I mean?
One thing I did not like about 7, like I obviously enjoyed the atmosphere, the Baker family, but the mold itself as enemies, it's like
sucks. Yeah.
Resident Evil's like, for all intents and purposes, like a zombie franchise. And I know that you don't fight zombies, but like the mold to me were just like
no, they were dumb. They were just these
it's like
blobs of
blobs,
goo.
yeah. Whereas Village, you're not fighting zombies, but it's definitely got that Resident Evil 4 vibe. Except what I quite like is that they're not just hitting you with weapons, like they will grab you and bite you like a zombie would.
Yes, But the Lycans are especially terrifying when they grab you.
Yeah. But on that, just the one thing we didn't really touch on is the shopkeeper, which is why the game feels a lot like, well, it's not the only reason, but one of the closest tie-ins to Resident Evil 4 is that you constantly encounter the shopkeeper who offers you, ammo, well, limited ammo and permanent upgrades for your weapons. And what I was afraid of going into this game is that Resident Evil 4 really is like, it's got, it starts off also being like a bit tense and horror, but, 1/3 into the game, it's like a full-on action, you just dispatching whole mobs of enemies. So I was worried that this game would be like that. And, some parts there are where you're just in a room trying to just survive and defeat, a dozen enemies, if not more, whatever. But I felt that they did the shop quite well in the sense that it doesn't feel like I could just walk away from the shop with a caseload. And I hear you, like you do get a lot of weapons, but I never felt like Leon, where I had a case full of like 10 grenades and flash grenades and incendiary grenades and like a mine launcher and this and this and this. Like it felt that the shopkeeper wasn't OP, if that makes sense. Like you get very subtle upgrades. You can't just stock up on ammo, that sort of thing. I don't know if you felt the same.
No, definitely. I felt like I couldn't just go there and like burn tons of money on ammunition. And I felt like at first everything was cheap, but then by the end of the game, like especially some of the gun upgrades, they were very, very expensive, and I didn't manage to get all of them.
No, at one point I was like, holy shit, I have 500,000. What is the currency called? I've gone blank now. It's like, damn, I have 500,000. Like, I'm rich. I can buy anything. And then it's like, I know there's new weapons you can buy and you can upgrade them. And I very quickly was like, oh shit, I'm broke again.
Yep.
Like it's a good balance.
I made the mistake where I thought I was at the end of the game, so I just burned tons of money, and then I realized I had a whole like area to go, and I was like, well, fuck. And then I got like new attachments for some of those weapons. I was like, those would have been super useful if I could afford them.
Yeah.
So, game is good. I really like it, and like we said, there's tons of replayability. So even though my playthrough took 8 hours and yours took 10, like I definitely plan on doing another playthrough, and Mercenaries has already hooked me. So there's a lot going on in this game. So so it's another good home run by Capcom. I think.
And where they go next? I mean, I think next year, Remake 4. But I'm talking beyond that. Like what Resident Evil 9 or whatever looks like, I have no idea. Like the way the game
9 is going to be interesting considering where the story goes.
And it goes places.
Although, to be fair, I felt the same after 7. I was like, wow, where do they go from here?
Yeah, but this one's like I don't know. This is
it feels almost like a big reset in a way.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We'll see.
Very interesting.